I've got my laser thermometer. Let's pull some temperatures. Oh, wow. There's a temperature inside of there that's... In today's video, we're going to be doing some springtime swamp cooler maintenance. Once I'm all done with the maintenance, we're gonna fill it full of water, turn it on, and we're gonna run it for the first time this season, and let's see just how cold it gets. I'm gonna clean up my swamp cooler and hose it out. I'm gonna check the tension on my swamp cooler's pulley belts. I'm gonna look over the bearings and do some maintenance and oil the bearings. We're gonna check the water pump, and of course, we're gonna change the cooling pads. Before I get the hose out and clean up my swamp cooler, I'm gonna take out these cooling panels. These have the cooling pads in them. You'll notice that I like to leave my old cooling pads in the swamp cooler all winter because that helps to keep debris from blowing inside. If you guys watched my video last year of swamp cooler restoration, you might notice that I now have a different water pan. I picked this water pan up on Facebook Marketplace, really cheap, and I just gave it a quick coat of paint. I think it turned out pretty good. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'm gonna let the pan drain. I'm pulling out my pump, I'm unplugging it, I'm gonna unhook it. I'm gonna hose it off and look it over and make sure everything's functioning properly. If you've got some scale anywhere on your pump or actually in your swamp cooler, you can just take a brush and it'll generally clean right off. Mine's not too bad though. I like to use one of these little baskets to set the pump in. This keeps large debris from getting in the pump. It's not gonna keep everything out, but it's gonna make your pump last a little bit longer. I also like to take a microfiber cloth and clean everything out. This thing's gonna get pretty dirty throughout the season, so I want to kind of start fresh, especially because I just picked up this pan last fall and put a fresh coat of paint on it. Let's start the season off clean. I got the pump all reinstalled, got it plugged in and the hose is hooked back up. Let's go over and check the tension on the pulley belt. For the pulley belt, I like to have about an inch of travel here when I'm squeezing. That way it's not too tight. Now I don't want it to slip at all. This one's not slipping and I kind of like the tension. If we were going to adjust the tension on this pulley belt, we would simply loosen these two bolts. This one's fixed and this one allows the motor to actually go up and down to adjust the tension. You don't want it too tight and you don't want it too loose. Let's move on to oiling the bearings. If you have a bad bearing, one of your bearings is giving you a problem, I also included that in last year's video. I had a really bad bearing and I went through the whole process of replacing it. But mine are pretty good. Let's take a look at them and put some oil in them. This is the bearing I replaced last year. It looks pretty good. There's no movement in there. Everything is solid. I moved the squirrel cage. Everything looks pretty good. We're just going to lift up this spout here on the top and we're going to put some oil in there. Not only is that one hard to see inside of there, it's really hard to get to, so I'm probably going to do that off camera. You should also be oiling these bearings periodically throughout the season. I'll include some affiliate links down in the video description for some of the products that I'm using in today's video. And if you guys purchase through any of my links, it really helps out my channel. Before I turn the water on to this swamp cooler, I'm going to be installing this scale eliminator. I think this is really going to help with some of that white scale that builds up inside of there. I'm going to be installing this on the 1/4 inch copper water feed line that comes out of the house. To install this thing, I'm going to be taking some steel wool and I'm going to polish that copper and make it nice and shiny. I'm going to use this micro pipe and tubing cutter to cut this tubing. This is going to work really good. The scale eliminator has a directional arrow. I want to make sure that I'm installing this with the flow of the water. If you've never used these ferrule fittings before, don't worry, these are super easy. You're just going to slide the nut onto your tubing, And then you're gonna slide the ferrule onto the tubing as well. You're gonna push this in all the way until it bottoms out. And then you're just gonna kind of sandwich it together and screw it on and tighten it up. Slide on the nut, slide on the ferrule, slide in the scale eliminator, and we're gonna tighten it up. Removing the old cooling pads is pretty self-explanatory, but let me go over it real quick. We have these nice wire keepers that clamp into these holes, and that's what holds your aspen pads into these frames. Some folks like to rinse these out and reuse them, and you probably could, but they're not very expensive, so I'm gonna go ahead and replace them. My frames are 15 by 24, and I have 2 of these frames. I purchased one pad that is 24 by 30 inches. I'm just gonna take my shears and I'm pretty much just gonna cut it in half. After you put your new cooling pad into your frames, you just put these wire keepers back in place just like you took them out. Now I'll just repeat the process with the other half on my other small frame. It's pretty easy. My center frame that goes in the middle measures 24 by 26. So I bought a pad that measures 24 by 36. That way I just have to cut off 10 inches. Some people don't like to use the aspen cooling pads because they're a little messy, but I don't mind because these things, they work great. And just like my other 2 frames, I'll take my wire keepers and I'll put them right back into place. One trick I like to do with these aspen pads is to take my leaf blower and blow out all the little pieces that are created when I make my cuts to fit them in there. That way all those little pieces don't end up inside of my swamp cooler. Another trick I like to use with my aspen pads is to take my hose and to rinse them all off and get them nice and wet before I put them back into the swamp cooler. Now we'll put the frames back into the swamp cooler, fill it up with water, and see how cold it gets. We've got the water turned back on, and over here on the scale eliminator, there are no leaks. Good to go. These swamp cooler water systems are pretty much set up like a toilet. You've got a float valve over here and this overflow tube. Sometimes it's necessary to bend the arm on the float valve so that you can adjust the level of the water inside the pan so that it doesn't waste water or overflow. I'm testing out my pump to make sure that it's pumping water. Looks like it's pumping water with some pretty good pressure. Let me go turn this off. We'll fill it back up and then we'll run it and see how cold it gets. As promised, let's do a quick performance test of the swamp cooler. I've got it all fired up. It's been running for about 30 minutes. It's on high right now. You can see the temperature back here. It's about 68 degrees, just a couple of feet in front of this thing. I've got my laser thermometer. Let's pull some temperatures. So my cabinet there is 75. Inside, 62. Let me get a little closer so you guys can see. Inside there, 62. Oh, wow, 59 degrees. There's a temperature inside of there that's 59 degrees. To give you some perspective, we've got 65 degrees here. Over here, my garage door's been open all morning. I've got 85 degrees. Let me zoom in on that for you. 85 degrees over here by the open garage door. I also have in my bushes, I've got a thermometer, and in the bushes out here, our thermometer is 88 degrees. So 88 degrees. Swamp cooler maintenance is very important because when these things are tuned in, they work really good. Be sure to check out my other video for swamp cooler restoration. I'm glad you watched today, and I hope you watch again.